All right, guys, so you come to this nutrition video, and this is for some people, this is the hardest part, and it just seems like such a discipline to change what we eat. For me personally, growing up, I grew up in Texas, Houston, Texas area, south of Houston, Texas, between Galveston. We spent a lot of time at the beach, but I also had a lot of friends from Louisiana. Okay, so Louisiana Cajun cooking. So you got this mix of Texas fried, chicken fried steak concept. I mean, the big day in school at Texas is on, I think it was Fridays. You get to actually eat it. I would. Some people, buy their lunch every day, but I got to buy my lunch on Fridays, and it was chicken fried steak day. And then the other one was, the square pizza that looks like cardboard, but some reason it tasted really good. And then the final one that I remember from growing up at school, was the cheesy fries or whatever. So just digestive nightmares. And what's crazy? I feel like every time I would eat that, I would have my stomach would just be killing me all afternoon. But I never related the two. My point is that food has become just this nostalgic kind of thing in our culture, and it's good and it's bad. It's a lot of fun. I still love cooking. I love creating awesome, working with meat and making good meals and stuff. And so I don't want to turn food into something that you just have to be disciplined about. I don't want it to be something that you just don't look forward to, right? It's okay that it's pleasurable. It's fun. I grew up with Cajun food, fried food, lots of seasonings, lots of butter, things like that. And I still do that, but I do it differently. And that's what I want to teach you guys is how do you eat healthy but still enjoy it? How do you eat healthy and love it, actually? When we go home for our Christmases, or our family comes to us for Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever that is, when we get together, everybody eats really healthy, but it's amazing. It's delicious. I don't eat things that I don't like, in other words. I don't force myself to just eat raw broccoli all the time, which isn't that great for you anyways, and I'll talk about that a little bit, but it can be fun, okay? So first thing is, some patients say, one of the common things I hear with patients is, I just fell off again, it's so hard, I don't know how you do it. And it's like, oh, it's easy. And I remember a patient the other day was like, it's easy for you. This is what you do. I get it. But I'll tell you this, is not always what I did, and it isn't always easy either. I grew up eating, peanut butter sandwiches. I'm still skinny, but I was this really skinny kid that just wanted to gain weight, and so carbs was the thing, or carbs, carbohydrates and calories are the thing. So I did a stack of peanut butter sandwiches, the Jiffy peanut butter with, Wonder Bread. Zero nutrition, almost no nutrition, super inflammatory. I would eat a big thing of rice. I would eat a ton of pasta, ton of bread. I would eat also eggs. I'd probably a dozen not healthy eggs every day, and not a dozen. I'm sorry, about 6 every day. But these boiled eggs, I was just so much food, right? And I was trying to gain weight and all that, but I was just tired all the time. Okay. I also grew up drinking almost 2 or 3 Dr. Peppers a day when I was a kid. I was told not to, but I would always sneak away in, and then I would shift over to Big Red. So if you don't know what Big Red is, you got to check it out. Big Red is an awesome drink. Actually, it's awful for you, but growing up, I loved it. So I had all these foods. I never did Mountain Dew, luckily. That's miserably bad for you. But my point is that I grew up drinking Cokes. I grew up eating Doritos. I grew up eating Lay's chips, a whole bag of Lay's chips, or the once you pop, you can't stop Pringles. I ate all that stuff. So my point of saying that is no, it wasn't just, I was raised in this healthy, perfect family. Now, my mom did try to do healthy, but unfortunately she did all the low-fat stuff, which I'll talk about when I'm about to talk about fats here, is actually really bad for you. So I say all that to let you know it's not that it was just easy. It was a decision I made, and it's not that I'm super disciplined either. It was I would have to step back and say the way myself, Dr. Holly, the way we got to where food is just something we enjoy, and it's extremely healthy for us, and it's something we use for energy, not just for pleasure. The way we got to that point is by reading, by listening to videos like this, by listening to people speak, and all those things together combined actually, it got us excited about it. And so it was actually fun. You would learn about I'd learn about broccoli and how good it was for you and what it can help your body do, because I like to perform at a higher level. I like to feel good, throughout my day. And so I would look at these things, or superfoods, or, I learned what, straight, white rice or Wonder Bread. I learned what that stuff does for you, white bread, how bad it is for you, what it does in your body. And so when you eat it, it just, over time, you just don't want it anymore. I used to get Papa John's pizza, and I'll stop talking about my past here, but I'm just kind of building this story here because I used to get Papa John's pizza $5.99 at least 3 days a week, if not more, in college, right? So I also grew up in Texas, which is the beer drinking capital of the world. So you put all that stuff together and it doesn't set you up for success in terms of the nutrition stuff. But somehow, some way, I am where I am today, and Dr. Holly is where she is today in terms of how we eat and how we, feed our kids and everything else. Yeah, so it isn't easy, but it's fun. I enjoy it. It really is. And so I want to teach you that stuff today. And through these videos, I'm going to teach you how do you cook better, how do you make the food that's still good. Because again, I still eat good food, and I think anybody that comes to our house that eats our food agrees. They love it. So I want to start first with, okay, how do you shift from eating this inflammatory diet to a non-inflammatory diet? Well, the first thing, I'm not going to start with sugar because that is the hardest one because we are addicted to it. I'm going to start with fat. Okay, fat has been given a bad name over the decades, and I'm not going to go into the history of why fat has been given a bad name, other than to say that it was very poorly researched. It was done by a guy who Ansel Keys, I think his name is, and it's done by a guy who, his study was so faulted, saying that fat causes you to be sick. Well, I'm just going to tell you this, that people have been eating saturated fat, animal fat, all that stuff for years, forever, and heart disease, cancer, diabetes, none of that stuff existed, hormone problems, none of that stuff was even around. Maybe every now and then someone would get that, but now it's like the biggest thing on the planet, and it's only gotten worse since we took fat out of our diet. Women's breast milk, think about this. It grows an actual human being from a baby to a full-born, kid, and it's the best thing on the planet for them, is 50% saturated fat. Google that. It's 50% saturated fat. And we're told that saturated fat kills you and is bad for you. That doesn't even make sense. So some of this is just logical and doesn't make sense. So fat is absolutely essential. It's absolutely good for you. Now, I'm not saying everybody's got to go on a ketogenic diet, okay? But you do have to have fat. Every hormone in your body starts with fat, and believe it or not, cholesterol. Okay, you can't produce estrogen or testosterone if your body doesn't produce cholesterol. Eating cholesterol is good for you, believe it or not, and that's why even the American Heart Association, which is awful, they don't have a clue what they're talking about. It's all publicized and all for money. But even them came back and said you can have your yolks again in your eggs, because guess what? You can't even digest the white part of the egg without the yolk. There's enzymes within that yolk. Remember, God does things right, man messes it up. So actually, I'm going to take a step back before I dive into fats. Here's some rules for nutrition. Number one, if God made it and man didn't alter it, typically you can eat it. Okay, and I say typically because there's obviously things that we don't eat. But when it comes to food, if it was raised, and when I say man doesn't alter it, man alters a chicken when they put him into this building and they feed him things they weren't meant to be fed, and they inject him full of hormones, and they inject him full of antibiotics, and they grow him really quickly. That's man altered. Man alters cow's milk, right? When they put them into a cage or pen or whatever, and then they're constantly milking them, and they pump them full of antibiotics. They feed them things that cows aren't supposed to eat, like grains and corn and candy and things like that, to fatten them up. They do these things to get high production, hormones to get high production. That man altered that, okay? That's not real. So if man didn't alter it and God made it, typically we can eat it. Okay. The other thing is, if you can't read it, don't eat it. Okay. So when you're reading the ingredients list on your packaged foods, every one of us, when we grab those packaged foods, don't read the front. The front always looks nice. There's nobody makes a product and says, I'm going to make this look bad for you. They make a product and they say, oh, gluten free. I love it when they do like cow's milk, gluten free, or stuff that's like, obviously there's no gluten. But they put gluten free. They put anything free they can find that people will trigger people's minds to think it's good for them. They'll put it. Okay, so just because it's gluten-free doesn't mean it's good. They'll put organic, but that doesn't mean it's healthy for you either. It's a good thing, but it doesn't mean that's healthy. You got to turn that product around. You got to read the ingredients list, and if you can't read something in that ingredients, or if the first thing on there is sugar or a type of sugar, it's bad for you. Okay, so if you can't read it, don't eat it. If man altered it, don't eat it. Okay, so those are your rules. Now, coming back to fat. Okay, so when it comes to fat, again, fat's actually healthy for you, so is saturated fat. There's types of fat that aren't good, but saturated fat is absolutely healthy for us. So when you're looking at fat, you don't need to know all about saturated and unsaturated and polyunsaturated. You don't really have to know all that stuff. What you need to know is what products have good fat and which products have bad fat. Okay, so I'm going to start with the products that have bad fat, and we have a PDF. If you go on our website, actually, if you go to our link tree, and if you're in the office, you have our QR code. That says our link tree, and on there is good fats versus bad fats PDF, and you can just look at it. But I'll kind of walk you through that. So bad fats are going to be oils are going to be hydrogenated and partially hydrogenated oils. Okay, that denatures the oil, turns it into a trans fat, which is extremely hard for our body to break down. Okay. Secondly, and what I mean by extremely, like our body uses heat to break things down. And if you take a trans fat, if you remember organic chemistry, I don't want to get too in depth here, but I think it's good to visualize. A trans fat, the structure of it goes like this, and there's electrons up here. Well, if electrons are far away from each other, it strengthens that chemical right there. So that product, I'm sorry. So you have two trans fats, the energy is far away from each other, so it's not going to break apart very easily, meaning it has to get extremely hot for it to have so much energy that that bond breaks apart. Okay, so those chemical bonds actually have strength to them. Now a cis, which is the other one, we don't talk about it because this is the healthy fat, goes like this. It's more up and down, and the electrons are way up here, and those electrons are constantly pushing against each other, so it doesn't take much heat. Remember calories. Calories is a measurement of heat. Okay, so our body breaks down calories with heat, and so it's how much calories do you burn? Well, however much heat you have to produce. Does that make sense? And so certain foods take more calories to break down. That trans fat is going to take a lot of work on your body to break it down, and most of the time we don't break it down. It's almost like plastic in our body. That's why margarine is so bad for you, because it's just like plastic. Anyway, so that's cis. It breaks down very easily, and we can actually use it. That's what we have to do, is we break down bonds within our food, and we use it in our body for nutrients, for amino acids, for things like that to build our body. Okay, so a little organic chemistry science class for you. All right, so stepping back, so we got hydrogenated, partially hydrogenated oils. You want to stay away from those. You want to stay away from oils that become rancid once they're removed from whatever they are. And so examples are going to be most of your vegetable oils. What they do is they pull the oil out of the vegetable, and then they actually it's very light sensitive. Vegetable oil it's very heat sensitive. That's why if you ever make fried chicken, or if you ever make fried turkey, you don't use vegetable oil, you use peanut oil, because peanut oil is actually a high heat capacity. Okay, so vegetable is low light capacity, low heat capacity. As soon as it gets pulled out of that vegetable, it starts to become rancid, and it's actually a rancid oil, and it would actually smell bad if they didn't put deodorizers in it. So vegetable oil is a no-go. And you know what's crazy is the fast food industry used to use coconut oil. And they use saturated fats, but then they came out and said saturated fats are bad for you. You know what they did? They shifted to vegetable oil, and that's why one of the many reasons, but one reason fast food was so bad for us for so long is it's literally these oils that inflame our entire body. Every cell in your body is surrounded by fat. It has a lipid bilayer of fat, and it needs about a 4-to-1 ratio of omega-6, right, to omega-3. We've heard of omega-3s, and they become popular because so you want a 4-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. The reason we've even heard of omega-3s, or even heard of this stuff, is because the average American diet is about a 20-to-1 ratio. So it's not that omega-6s are bad and omega-3s are good, it's that our ratio in our diet, in our food system, in our animals, these conventional raised cows and chickens, it's about a 20-to-1 ratio, meaning a potato chip with bad oils in it, a 20-to-1 ratio, right? And so we have this way twisted ratio of fats, and we eat it, and our body's trying to use that to make our cells. And now our cells, because of that ratio being so far off in our cells, we become congested, and that cell actually builds up and it can't get rid of. A lot of times good stuff can't get in, but even worse, bad stuff can't get out. Our cells are constantly getting rid of toxins and denatured cells, and actually that's how it will turn into a cancer cell. The DNA within the cell will denature, and that's what cancer is. So actually eating vegetable oil, that's how it would lead to something like cancer on a regular basis. Other bad fats. So again, go to that PDF because I'll probably miss some just talking here. But you got your vegetable, canola oil, safflower oils, cottonseed oils. These are all very inflammatory. And just you guys, cotton is one of the highest pesticide crops on the planet. If you've ever seen a cotton field, they actually kill it before they even take the product out of it with a pesticide herbicide. So not pesticide, an herbicide. So we have all these oils that are super rancid, but it's in most of our food system. So again, you got to read the ingredients list. Turn the box around, read the ingredients list, and that'll help you see, what's actually in it, what oils they're using. Okay, some of the good oils that you want to use, and this is for cooking, even in your food products, is going to be your coconut oil. Coconut oil, I mean, if you just look at the constituents of coconut, it's pretty coconut oil, coconut water, an actual coconut. It has the same amount of actual electrolytes and things that our blood has. So it actually, I mean, in some levels, I've even read that coconut water can almost be used as like an IV drip for your overall, health. So coconut is an amazing food for us. It's antiviral, antibacterial. It has medium chain fatty acids, which actually increase our metabolism. So many good impacts for it. Okay, and that's what this MCT oil, medium chain triglyceride. They're extracting it from things like coconut oil. Okay, so coconut oil naturally has these medium chain triglycerides, which is amazing for our overall health. It's saturated fat as well, which is actually really good for us. Okay, what other oils are really good for you? So you got coconut oil, you got avocado oil. Now be careful with avocado oil, and this is where nutrition can get a little tough sometimes because we also live in an industrial world. A lot of the avocado oils on the market have been shown to be rancid when they actually tested them, meaning poor product taking care of it. So you want to research the avocado oil that you're going to get, but avocado oil also, along with coconut oil, has a high heat capacity, which means you can cook with it. Okay, coconut oil over about 400 degrees starts to break down and will become rancid. That's where the smoke, you see that smoke coming up. That means that oil is breaking down. It's burning. It's going to be bad for you now. But the other one is grapeseed oil. Grapeseed has a high heat capacity. It has one of the highest heat. I think it's about 450, and so you can actually get a little bit hotter with grapeseed oil. So if you're going to do a high heat meal, grapeseed oil is your one. If you're going to keep it more in that 400 range, coconut oil, just don't let it steam. A lot of people love olive oil, and I do too. It's amazing for your heart health. I've actually read some things on olive oil that show that when you take olive oil, you actually need it. There's things in vegetables along with olive oil. And this kind of makes sense, because when God made the olive, he made it all together, right? But there's certain things in vegetables that when you take a salad and you put olive oil on it, that actually takes that olive oil and makes it extremely good for just overall antioxidant effect, good healthy fats in there as well. So olive oil is great for you. However, it's light sensitive and it's heat sensitive. So you also want high quality. So know your source. One, and number two is you don't want to heat that up, and you want to keep it in a dark bottle, probably in a cabinet. Okay, so just a little oil study in here for you. But so those oils, you got good fats and bad fats. That's the oil world. Okay, so when you're cooking, stick with these coconut, the avocado, the grapeseed oil, and then when you're going to put on your salad, stick with your olive oil. Okay, and that's good. That's pretty much the only oils you need. If you see any other oils within your foods on the box, you want to stay away from those. They're typically rancid. Okay, now peanut oil, I mentioned that earlier. It has a high heat capacity, but the ratio of fat within that oil is about a 20-to-1 ratio. And so it's super rancid. So it's super inflammatory. It's a high omega-6 count oil, really hard on our body in terms of inflammation, even though it has a high heat capacity. Okay? All right, so that's our oils. So the other things with fats that are bad fats you want to stay away from are the type of animals you eat. Okay? Conventional meat is going to have bad fat in there. Again, that 20-to-1 ratio is what they found in a conventional meat. And so when people say meat's bad for you, well, guys, the studies they've done on meat, the China study, if you look that up, the studies that have done on meat has been conventional raised meat. Cows aren't meant to eat grains. Their stomach isn't even set up for corn and grains. And if you've ever, I'm a deer hunter, so sometimes when you go deer hunting, and maybe I hope this isn't too gross, but it'll give you a good point, is that their stomach isn't actually digesting corn when you find that in there. You actually find these chunks of corn, and we know that because when we eat corn, what do we see on the other end? You see corn on the other end because your body is really hard to break down. Well, they give cows corn and they give cows grain to fatten them up, and it's cheap. Soy, grains, things like that, wheat, and these are genetically modified foods in our country today. So mostly genetically modified. I think it's 90-something% of soy and wheat are genetically modified. There's 5 or 7 different genetic makeups of wheat in our world today, which is why American wheat is so bad compared to if you go to another country and you eat wheat bread, you don't feel the same. So that's a side note. So they feed them this stuff. They also feed them candy. Believe it or not, they've actually shown that there's leftover candy from places where it's gone bad. They actually just give that to cows because any sugar, okay? So remember, guys, if they feed them grains, this is a perfect scenario to show you how bad grains are for you too. If they're feeding them grains, corn, candy to fatten them up, guess what it's going to do to you too? It's going to fatten you up. It's such a high insulin rush to the body and creates a lot of cortisol, and our body stores that fat. Now, this animal, so they've raised these animals with grains, okay? So the cow eats the grain, not meant to do that. Its stomach doesn't work very good with it, and so what it does is it actually will create so much gas within the stomach and so much bacterial overgrowth within the stomach that they have to give it antibiotics. So this idea, I've heard farmers say you can't raise cattle with antibiotics. No, you can raise cattle without antibiotics. The reason they need antibiotics is because what you're feeding them and the environment they probably live in too, all stuck together with a bunch of poop and stuff. Hey, if you want to learn, like just watch this stuff. Go watch this is an old video, but go watch Food Inc. They really do a good job at looking at our overall meat system. Okay, so again, conventional meat is bad for you. You want that animal to be fed. It doesn't have to be grass, but it needs to be grain fed, meaning it needs to be fed the way it was meant to eat, right? So when I said I was a deer hunter, they eat all over. They eat forbs, they eat branches from trees, they eat shrubs, they eat all this different stuff, but it's green. It's what they're meant to eat, and their body breaks it down and uses it. They're not meant to eat all this other stuff, okay? So organic, free range, green fed, if it's meat like cows and things. For chickens, obviously they don't eat grass and stuff like that, but they eat lots of bugs. They need to be free range. Let them go do what chickens need to do, eat what chickens should eat, okay? And you can look at your farms, but those bad fats in the conventional meat are going to wreak havoc on your health. They absolutely will cause heart disease, cancer, diabetes, all that stuff with unconventional meat. So it's not turkey. I grew up with the turkey's good because it's low in fat. Beef's bad because it's high in fat. That has nothing to do with it. A good fat steak from a grass-fed, organic, free-range animal is amazingly healthy for your body. Period. Okay, and gets this, guys. We work with a lot of vegetarians that come into our office and they say, "Oh, it's vegetables," and I'm not. Some people just are against eating meat because of it was an animal and whatever. But some people think it's actually healthy just to eat vegetables. One of our team members that's moved, her husband came in. He's a vegetarian. Okay. And we did testing on him. This has been very consistent with testing on blood work with vegetarians. Is we find high homocysteine levels. Okay, homocysteine is a marker for heart disease, but it's also something when your homocysteine levels are up high, above 9, really, it means you're not detoxing. That's a big part of detoxification and glutathione production in our body. Okay, and so here's why. Let's just talk vitamin A. The amount of vitamin A you're going to get from one steak. It would take you about 40 pounds of carrots to get that one, that steak, how nutrient dense a steak is. So we think vegetables, but what do you think cows eat? They eat those vegetables and it produces their meat. So you definitely are getting what that cow eats, and that's why it's so important the cow eats good food, but you're getting lots of nutrients from meat. You know what the best multivitamin on the planet is? Liver. It's amazing. You're getting lots of vitamin A, lots of B vitamins, B12s. You're getting good cholesterol. You're getting all this great stuff from that liver, iron, all those things. So again, not to get too wordy on this, grass-fed, organic, free range versus conventional is an absolute. If you're going to make one change in your diet, make that your change. Okay? Change your meat because you're getting everything. It's bioaccumulation. The reason they tell women not to eat tuna that are pregnant, is because they have a lot of mercury in them. Why do they have a lot of mercury? They live a very long life and they eat a lot of stuff in the ocean, and they filtrate stuff in the ocean to their gills. It absorbs in their bloodstream and it stores in their fat, and they're a very fatty fish. And so it actually has high levels of mercury. Why are salmon good? Well, salmon have a short lifespan. If you've ever been to Alaska and you walk down the rivers, you're going to see dead salmon everywhere because they go down that stream, they lay their eggs, and they die. So salmon have a short life expectancy, and so they're not filled with as much chemicals. Sardines, a lot of these fish like this have less chemicals. You're not going to find a fish on the planet anymore that doesn't have some sort of heavy metal in it, unfortunately. They've gone to I've read studies on the streams of Alaska, and they're still finding chemicals in that salmon. Steaks, PCBs, and plastics, and heavy metals, but I think that's all of our food system, so I won't go down that because that's depressing. But grass-fed, free-range, organic, wild-caught, not farm-raised. A farm-raised fish is not fed what a fish should be eaten. Same thing as conventional meat. It's fed grains. Fish aren't meant to eat grains, but it fattens them up. It's cheap. They build up a lot of bacteria because they put them in this tank with a bunch of other fish, and they're eating bad food. Then they have to pump it full of antibiotics. They put all kinds of chemicals in the water so it doesn't get bad. Trust me, stay away from farm-raised fish. You want free range. You want wild caught, and stay away from tilapia. It's all GMO. It's all awful. Okay, there's a reason it's everywhere because it's cheap. It's made cheaply. It's a nasty fish. Okay, so you want wild caught. All right, where are we at? So we got good fats. Those are our meats. Those are our oils. What else in good fats? So you got your vegetables that are good fats. You got avocado oil. You got your nuts like walnuts, macadamia nuts, Brazil nuts. These are some of the better quality nuts that you want to eat. Almonds are fine, but they become very inflammatory very quickly. So anything more than a handful of almonds is going to start to create inflammation. It's also a high in lectin, which means it's very hard to break down and digest. So if you are someone that eats a lot of nuts, especially almonds, soak them in water. This is kind of a trick, and it's athletes, for instance. If you soak almonds in water for 12 hours, they'll expand. And they call it sprouting. So they'll actually sprout and they'll increase their vitamin E, they'll increase their B vitamins within there. And it's actually like a little super supplement for used to marathon running or pre-game workout, whatever. Pop a couple of those almonds and it's actually really good for you. So you sprout it is another word. It's what you do there. Now, when it comes to nuts, guys, I'm just kind of flowing here, so hopefully you're getting a lot from this. So cashews actually aren't nuts, they're legumes. Okay, so legumes, but they're actually really hard to break down and they're really inflammatory. So my favorite one of all is cashews, but it's actually probably the worst one for you. Just a FYI on that. If you're eating your nuts in a bag with a bunch of fruit, that is a digestive nightmare. So trail mix, digestive nightmare. Not only are you taking all the water out of that dried fruit, it's high in sugar, but now you're taking fruit and you're taking nuts and you're putting them together and you're eating them. Well, they digest in two different environments. One's more acidic, one's more basic environment. And one of them's just going to sit there. Typically the fruit, it'll just sit there, it'll fermentation, that fructose gets fermented, and that's where a lot of our yeast issues can come from as well. But you'll notice when you eat trail mix that you get gas. Fermentation creates gas. So and that's a good thing there. If you notice that you're gaseous a lot of times it's just what you're eating and how you're putting them together. If you're eating a big steak and then you're eating an apple, same thing. That apple is going to sit there and it's going to ferment. So I would say fruit, always eat fruit by itself and low amounts of fruit because it has fructose, which is 100% digested in the liver and does put stress on the liver, which we already have a lot of stress on our liver in our world today. High fructose corn syrup is a great example of this. High fructose corn syrup, not only is it toxic, if just go on YouTube, Google high fructose corn syrup, how it's made, watch the videos on how it's made. But what happens is, tons of chemicals to even make high fructose corn syrup. It's not a real thing, like actual man-made, God-made thing, even though there's corn. So that fructose corn syrup is super, super toxic. One of the main reasons we have fatty liver issues is that high fructose corn syrup in so much of our foods because it's 100% digested in the liver. It's extremely inflammatory and it just inflames the liver and the gallbladder. You want to know why one of the biggest medical procedures right now is removing gallbladders, which is crazily stupid, is because you need your gallbladder. That's how you break down fat. And by the way, if you don't have a gallbladder, you have to do something to break down your fat. You no longer have that bile releasing into your gut to break down your fat that you're eating. So you need to take bile salts, okay? So if you don't have a gallbladder, you know someone that doesn't have a gallbladder, you think your medical doctor, at least after he cuts out your organs, think about this, just take a step back, we're chopping organs out of human bodies. That's disgusting. Sorry if that was extreme for you guys, but it's reality. I mean, why are we doing this? God didn't mess up and say you don't need a gallbladder. Now I get a gallbladder, it gets so bad that it's so inflamed and it actually, explodes or whatever. That's different, but we don't just take them out. There's so many ways to help detox the gallbladder. You don't have to take them out. They just don't know what it is, so they just cut it out. And so what I was getting at is if the least they can do when they cut it out is say, here's some bile. Take this every time you eat meat, fat so you can break it down. Because guys, if you're not breaking down fat, I know I'm all over the place, but hopefully you're getting stuff here. If you're not breaking down fat, you're not able to absorb properly vitamin D, vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin K, which are all essential for our health. Everything in our body uses these vitamins on a regular basis. They're fat-soluble vitamins. You can't break them down if you can't break down fat. Does that make sense? And that's why fat is actually so good for you because it's stacked full of a lot of these vitamins. So if you don't have a gallbladder, you have to take bile salts. One of the stool tests, when we do a stool test, we can see if you build up fat in your stool, meaning you're not breaking it down and using it. That's also somebody that needs to take bile salts. All right, so let me step back. We're on fats here. Where are we at? I kind of got down a trail. Where the heck am I? All right, so that's all I'm going to say about fats. Get the PDF. You'll get this with your as a part of care, but get the PDF on good fats versus bad fats. Okay. Next, sugar. So I do have to go through carbohydrates. Let's say carbohydrates. And just so you guys know, when we say carbs, everything has carbs in it. Meat actually has some carbs in it. Everything, it's part of the constituents of it. But we're talking about these high carbohydrate foods, things like your rice, your grains that are mostly just carbohydrates. They create an insulin rush in the body. And eating wheat, which is a high carbohydrate, that's a non-GMO, organic, ancient grain that is the normal genetic makeup of what wheat is. It has, you got the spore, right, and you got the germ, wheat germ, and the spore in there. The spore is sugar. The germ is actually full of nutrients and minerals and all kinds of good stuff for you. So it's not like that wheat, a good whole grain of real wheat, isn't good. It's that we've broken down our wheat products so much, genetically modified, high herbicides, high glyphosates, all this stuff in there. And so it's just not a good product in our world, or especially in America today. Okay, so some people say, well, that's a God food. It is, but man has altered it so much that it's actually really bad for us. It also has lectin, which is hard to break down. Okay, if you were to really see a cool eating plan to read about, it's called the Plant Paradox Diet. It's written by a cardiologist. Right? And lectin is one of the things that he talks about staying away from and how effective it is. My sister lost 160 pounds on this Plant Paradox diet, and that's why. So, but it also has gluten, and gluten has become this scary bad thing, and it is really bad, especially in our wheat products, because our body sees it as it's like this gummy substance. Our body sees it. And I don't care who you are. I don't care if you've been tested and you don't have a wheat allergy, or if you think you do fine when you eat gluten. Here's what happens in your body. This is actually physiologically, biochemically what our body does. Gluten comes in, our body sees it. It says, okay, we have an infection here. It releases something called zonulin. That gaps open your cell lining. If you've heard of leaky gut, this is what that is. Our gut lining is impermeable. Only things that our body wants to get through should get through. But when we have that immune response, it starts to gap open. The cells open, and our cells shrink, and it starts to gap open, and proteins from your food get into your bloodstream. Proteins from the air we breathe, the chemicals, all that gets into the bloodstream. The body creates an immune response to it, and now you have these allergies to all these foods. It's one of the reasons we have so many food allergies right now is because of gluten. Okay, it creates so much inflammation. So if you're eating bread every day at lunch, we have a sandwich, right? Simple enough, right? Not a big deal. Maybe some toast for breakfast. Maybe at night you have a bun or a roll with your with your dinner or whatnot, but it seems no big deal. It's not that much, just every so often. It takes weeks for gluten to get out of our system, first of all, but what's happening is you're in every single day, you're in a constant infection state. You're in a chronic infection state. And what the studies on infections have shown is that chronic infections cause cancer. They suppress your immune system so much that over time you get cancer. Acute infections, which everybody seems to be so afraid of, I don't know why, but acute infections are what God put here to help us strengthen our immune response, to help protect us as we get older. Okay, so babies are born, they don't have an immune response. They do. They have an innate immune response, but they don't have a lot of bacteria yet. They don't have a really strong immune system. So God says, okay, breast milk, tons of immune factors, gets all the good healthy stuff from the mom, starts to build that immune system from the mom, the good bacteria, all these things in the enzymes. Baby's taking that, is building an immune response, right? But let's say the baby gets measles. Oh my gosh, he gets measles. And I don't mean to be just kind of sarcastic here, but measles, it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's a virus. There's millions of viruses constantly raining down from the atmosphere on us every single day. They don't fly around from town to town. They don't come during certain seasons. Our body is, there's a suppression of our immune system in certain seasons because of how we live our lifestyle in the cold weather and the less light. But they're not just there that time of year. It's just that our body is suppressed, and those viruses are able to take over because we have a weak immune system. That's why everybody doesn't get it. So viruses are actually just a normal symbiotic part of our environment. They're here. Okay, now I know science can alter and make new viruses, and that's what they're doing, and that's bad, but viruses in and of itself is not a bad thing. There's more viruses on this planet than there is any other life form, okay? So if they were out to kill us, we would be dead. So I hope you guys can see that viruses actually aren't bad for us. Getting the measles, studies on this, I'm just going to use measles, is the studies have shown that it actually increases. So you get the measles, you get better, you're good. And that's most always what happens. I'm not talking about you get vaccinated for measles. That's different. That's not going to create the immune response that we want. Here's what happens. Our body, we get measles, we get the flu, we get COVID, we get whatever. Our body gets rid of it, and it creates an immune response. It creates antibodies. It actually strengthens our CD4, CD8 count. When you get off here, Google CD4, CD8 count. You're going to go on there. You're going to find out on the medical websites that the CD4 to CD8 count is what tells us how strong your immune system is. Okay. Now, doctors can test for the CD4, CD8 count. If you want to know how healthy your immune system is, ask us for an immune panel. Part of that is a CD4, CD8 count testing. That's what they test for patients with HIV to see how strong their immune system is. But they don't do it for anyone else. I don't understand that. It's very inexpensive. It'll tell you if you have a good immune system or if you don't, but it's not a normal test. Weird. I think that should be a part of a yearly physical. But your CD4, CD8 count strengthens over time with acute infections. Right? That's why I think playing in the dirt, I don't say picking your nose is good, but they have had studies on picking your nose and kids that eat their boogers that have a longer, healthy life. Just kidding, that's gross. But but eating dirt, playing in the dirt, that's why I say kids that play in the dirt don't get sick all the time. Well, because they're constantly, their immune system strengthening itself just like lifting weights. But just like lifting weights, if you work out and you get a bench press and you bench press all day long and you never stop, what's going to happen? You're going to tear your muscles, you're going to fatigue, and you're going to be worthless. That's what happens in a chronic immune response. So gluten is a chronic immune response. I said all that to tell you don't eat gluten, okay? Because it is a big deal. And that's just the science of it. It's not a marketing thing. It's just not good for you. All right, so we got our carbohydrates. First thing is we want to stay away from and reduce as much grains as possible. And I'm talking about pasta, rice, breads, things that have high amounts of sugar because they create an insulin rush in the body. The pancreas releases a lot of insulin. It has to grab all that sugar, get out of the bloodstream because we can't have too much sugar in our bloodstream. Otherwise, we go into a coma. Our body takes that sugar, puts it into our cells. Insulin attaches to the sugar. It goes to the cell wall. The cell wall brings the sugar in, and we're good. Problem is we have this bombardment of sugar all day long. Everything we eat turns to sugar immediately when it hits our body. So these carbohydrates, all that, and our cells now become resistant to insulin. That's type 2 diabetes. Insulin resistance is type 2 diabetes. Now we eat that same sugar. Our insulin can't get the sugar into the cell. If you don't take a drug for that, it's going to actually cause a diabetic coma. You're going to get too much blood or too much sugar in your blood. So we have to actually eat. So and that's just not diabetes. PCOS, typically an insulin-resistant insulin issue thing. That's why they give metformin for people with PCOS, right? High testosterone, or for men, low testosterone levels, insulin. Not being able to get pregnant, insulin. A lot of times that infertility is insulin because it has such a big impact on our hormones because high insulin means cortisol response. If you need a lot of cortisol in your body, you're going to gain fat around here. But if you need a lot of cortisol in your body because of all this stress from sugar, you're not going to produce estrogen properly, testosterone properly because your body says, okay, I can either produce cortisol and survive this inflammatory response, chronic infection response, or I can produce estrogen and reproduce. Which one's your body going to pick? It's always going to pick this one because that's survival, okay? And that's why we have so many hormone issues just based on our diet. You take inflammatory fats, you take inflammatory sugar, high amount of sugar and grains, and we're in a constant stress response just from our diet right there. You know, I talk about health when I talk about health, I talk about stress, and it all goes back to how much stress do you have in your body? You know, again, if you do a bench press all day, every day, you're going to crash. If you have so much stress, your body isn't resilient to that stress, you're going to crash. Some people can handle more than others, but it all goes down to let's get rid of the stressors we don't have to have. Meaning, when I walk outside today, there's aluminum in the air. There's toxins in the air. I can't change that. But what I can change is the stress I'm putting on my body from the amount of grains and sugars and from the amount of bad fats I eat and from the amount of chemicals I eat. I can control that, and that allows my body to handle the emotional stress better. We all know when we're feeling inflamed and we're tired, our ability to handle stress crashes. Diet can change that for you, okay? So that's your carbohydrates. The good carbohydrates are your vegetables. Broccoli is a carbohydrate. Okay, so your cruciferous vegetables are amazing. That's really where you want to focus your stuff. And when you eat vegetables, steam those vegetables, get them to a bright green color or bright red or whatever that vegetable color is. That bright color brings these phytonutrients up to the edible level and actually breaks down our body way better than if you ate it raw. So steaming, not over steaming, not overcooking, but where it's that bright color, just a really quick steam actually helps break down some of the fibers, some of the stuff that our body has to work really hard to break down, especially with nightshades. So steaming is the way to go with those. That's your carbohydrates, okay? Stay away from refined sugars, remove as much sugar, remove pasta, grains, rice, remove those as much as possible. If you want something else, like, hey, I missed that carb in my meal, cool, quinoa, that's a great one. Every so often, do some organic jasmine rice, right? Stuff that has a little bit of nutrients in there and isn't so refined, okay? And when it comes to sweeteners, we'll do a whole video on just like how do you sweeten stuff up, but you want to stay away from synthetic sweeteners too, because synthetic sweeteners, so I'm not saying no sugar and use Splenda, synthetic sweeteners are toxin, right? Sucrose, or I think it's sucralose, is, as they say, it just goes straight through the body. Well, no, it doesn't go straight through the body because we don't see it in the urine. It absorbs into your fat cells and makes your body hold on to fat. It also is hard for your liver, super toxic, okay? So synthetic sweeteners actually are worse for you than sugar. So I'd rather you have a Coke versus a Diet Coke, but don't have any. High fructose corn syrup, all those obviously you want to get rid of. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is chemicals, okay? Chemicals in our food system is rampant. There's 3,000 plus different chemicals just in our that the FDA has said are okay to use, and most of these have never been studied. Some of these are grandfathered in whenever they started actually saying there's regulations on these chemicals. Okay, and so they destroy our body. So any of these man-altered it, don't eat it. Anything that has preservatives in there, if there's a word you can't read in your food, preservatives in there. If you're eating conventional fruit, you're going to have herbicides and pesticides sprayed on it, right? And I always think about this. We take an apple. I grew up. You take your apple. What's the first thing you do before you eat your apple? You put it under the sink, and you rinse that apple off. It sounds pretty like a good idea, right? We're going to clean some of that stuff off. But here's actually what happens. So pesticide and herbicides are lipid-based, so that water will brush off of them. So when it rains, it doesn't just rinse it off the plant or whatever. So we're taking that apple and we're just actually throwing water on there, which does nothing for the herbicides and pesticides. However, there's fluoride and chlorine in your water and a bunch of other junk in our water, medications and stuff like that from your tap water. So you're actually just saying, okay, I'm going to put some of this on there. So it's actually worse than not washing an apple. So organic is going to typically be better. I know, I get it that, if they grew in Mexico, I think after they do it, it's called grown organically, so then they spray some stuff on there for shipping. So some of the things you can do if you're going organic and you're not close to home with what you're buying is soak it in vinegar and water. So you get white vinegar, just a couple shots of white vinegar in a bowl of water. We do this with all of our fruit, for instance, all of our berries. So raspberries, strawberries. You soak those for about 10-15 minutes, and then you rinse them back off and filter water, and then that's how you eat it. So you can actually get the pesticides and herbicides off of it because they're oil based. You got something break through that oil, and that's what the vinegar does. Okay, so that's actually a really good way to kind of clean your fruit and vegetables. Sugar in general is we want to reduce that, but chemicals in general we want to reduce the chemicals. So the best thing I can tell you is read the ingredients list, eat real food. An organic apple is a real food. An organic carrot is a real food. A free-range organic animal is a real food, not pumped full of antibiotics and hormones. Okay, the chemicals. I'm talking about just in our food system. I'm not going to talk about in the air and our products, but just our food have a lot of xenoestrogens in there, and these are chemicals that act as estrogen to the body. They bind to our estrogen receptor sites and actually cause a lot of health issues. The reason the number one fastest growing cancer in men is breast cancer right now is because of these chemicals actually in our food. Okay. Final thing I'm going to say on chemicals in your food is stay away from the fast food, the drive-through restaurants. I said meat's the most important thing, but I would say this: if you changed one thing in your diet, never go to a fast food restaurant again. Don't even see it as a restaurant. Don't even see it as food. And I mean Chick-fil-A. I 100% mean Chick-fil-A. It's no better than McDonald's. They're better people maybe that own it, but it's no better in terms of the type of food it is. It's going to be extremely inflammatory to your body. At the minimum, don't give it to your kids. Like, hey, I get it. You're hurting yourself. That's your choice, but don't give it to your kids. We have patients that come through here sometimes, and I hope I don't hurt anybody's feelings here, but they're doing all these things for their health because they have a symptom and they're changing it, but then they feed their kids whatever and they give them Cokes and candy and all this crap. So the problem is that they're just getting sick. That doesn't make sense. Like if you know something's bad for it, let's shift our thinking. Pull ourselves out of the normal American, they call it the SAD American diet, standard American diet. Pull ourselves out of that. If you want to be like everyone else, if you want your kids to be like everyone else in terms of health, feed them what they're telling you to eat. Feed them and what they're putting in front of us on commercials. If you want your kids to be extremely healthy, if you want to not worry about heart disease, cancer, diabetes, autoimmune diseases, let's shift our thinking and change what we're feeding them. They matter. I get it, they don't feel it. And this is the hardest part for kids, especially teenagers. They can eat whatever they want. I told you, I had 3 Dr. Peppers a day. I felt great. I was skinny. I felt healthy, minus the digestive problems and the acne. I wasn't healthy, I just thought I was. Get my point is that this is not just for us. This is for your entire family to start to make changes on. And I know this is a lot, and this is why I put this in a video, so you can stop and hit pause whenever you want. You can go back and watch a little bit more. You can come back and, hey, I don't remember that part, because you can only get so much at once. Okay, so I wouldn't suggest just watching this whole thing once. You're only going to get a couple things. I would say come back and forth on this over and over again. All right, so that's chemicals. Final thing, I talked about meat, so that was what I was going to talk about next. I talked about vegetables. Your cruciferous vegetables are going to be, best for you in terms of they help your body detox. This is something called DIM, D-I-M, dimethyl, blah, 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 big word. Within that, cruciferous vegetable actually helps your glutathione levels and methylation, which methylation is how we detoxify things in our body. Really good. Another thing I was going to recommend adding to your diet, either diet or supplement, is organ meats. Liver is an amazing high methyl food. It's one of the missing things in our diet, so you can add that in. Next thing I want to talk about here is water. So what kind of water do you drink, right? That's a really big question, and so I hear people. I'm adjusting them, and and they're just really stiff, and you can just tell like you're dehydrated. And so you drink much water, and I drink a ton of water. Okay, well, what kind of water do you drink? From the fridge. There's a filter on that, I guess. I mean, it gets rid of some chlorine and some bacteria, but it doesn't get rid of fluoride. And also, guys, if you're highly filtered water, well, there's nothing in that water, and our body doesn't need water. Our body needs electrolyte-filled fluid with water in it, okay? So our body needs potassium, magnesium, all this kind of stuff that actually comes in good, healthy water. So if you're ultra-filtering your water, add a pinch of sea salt back in. But yes, you want to get rid of fluoride, you want to get rid of chlorine, and you want to get rid of the medications that are in our water system. They've actually tested our water system, statin medications, antidepressants. So you come in, I don't take any medications. If you're drinking tap water, you take medications. Sorry, that's just our system right now. It stinks. But you filter that. We use a reverse osmosis system. We have a pre-house filter, and then we use a whole house filter. Then it comes through the sink, and we put a reverse osmosis system in there with some mineral addition back into it. Sometimes I'll add a pinch of sea salt with that, or drink electrolyte mix, without chemicals in it. And that good healthy water right there is going to make sure that you're not getting fluoride and chlorine. Why wouldn't you want fluoride? I thought fluoride was good for us. It keeps your teeth white, right? Well, if you've ever been in chemistry class in high school and you paid attention at all, you saw the fluoride behind the glass window. It is one of the most toxic things in that lab. Why would we put that into our body? One, just that right there. What the heck are we thinking putting that into our body? It is part of a business model in the first place that it is in our system at all, okay? Why do they put it in the water? Because it's an antibiotic. It kills things, and it's also basic. But watch this. Fluoride is in the halide group of chemicals. You got iodine, you got fluoride, or iodide, fluoride, you got chloride, you got bromide, and these bromelain, you see these bromelain, bromalized bread, right? You see fluoride toothpaste, fluoride water, fluoride in our water system. You see chlorine in our water and to break down foods. So you got all these halides in there. Okay. Iodine is what they used to use, and you know this if you're a camper or something like that, you use iodine to kill things, right? To clean your water. Iodine is something we use. Chlorine, fluoride, bromelain, those aren't something our body uses. here's what or should use. What happens is we take that fluoride, it binds to the receptors that iodine was supposed to bind to. The body sees it as iodine. And that's a big part we have a lot of iodine receptors is our thyroid. One of the main reasons we have so many thyroid issues in America today, whether you know you do or not, people's thyroids are super sluggish because of too much fluoride. Okay, so fluoride and chlorine in your food system and in your toothpaste is going to cause thyroid issues, or it can cause thyroid issues. It's also bad for your gut. It kills the good bacteria in your gut. There's a lot of reasons to stay away from fluoride. Filtrate your water with a system that will actually do that. A great pitcher that you can use, the pitchers like the Brita filter, not Brita, but there's one called Clearly Water, I think it is. No, sorry, Clearly Filtered. Clearly Filter. Google that, 60-something bucks. You get your pitcher. I love this pitcher because we actually take it on trips with us. So if you're going to the beach and we're driving, we take that with us, and that's how we use to filter our water system. Okay. I will say fluoride filters you have to change more often.